The coming weeks in Tallahassee could impact your bank account, your outdoor recreation, your neighborhood schools, and your property values. My guest today will be at the center of decision-making on all of those issues. State Representative Steve Crisafulli is part of the Republican leadership team that will control which legislation goes to the floor in the upcoming session. And later this fall, he will take over as Speaker of the House. As Speaker designate, he has spent months raising money for Republican House candidates across Florida, and he has traveled across the country to meet with donors. In turn, the candidates he helps are expected to support him when he takes the gavel for next year's session. In a recent interview, Crisafulli previewed the session and offered some exclusive insight on election year politics.
Steve, thanks so much for joining us here today. Give us an overview. You've been in committee meetings up to now, so you're going to hit the session rolling, really, with an idea of what the priorities are. What should we expect?
Well, as you said, we've been going through committee meetings over the last, several months, actually, even before the holidays. And, there's been a lot of ideas vetted, and the Senate leadership as well as House leadership have come up with, some ideas that we can work together with a work plan for this upcoming session. So, I think you're going to see a lot of issues with regard to cutting taxes and fees. That's been a big topic of conversation as well.
I think for your license tags,
sure,
right?
Yeah, and that's something that's been kind of a big conversation for several years, and we're at an opportunity now with the state budget to where we can give back that money to Florida's hardworking families, and we're going to have an opportunity to do that. The governor put out a proposal, and the House and Senate still have to work on theirs, but some ideas have certainly been put in play with regard to that, as well as commercial rent taxes and those sorts of things. So there's a lot to be discussed in the next 60 days for sure, but there's other issues though. I mean, obviously we have to balance the budget. We do have a surplus of over $1 billion that is going to be a conversation piece, because you got to have the taxes that come into that and the fees that you're going to roll out. So $500 million automatically comes out. So then you're dealing with another small pot of money. We've had an increase in the number of students in the state, so education funding will go up. More of a demand on health care, so health care costs go up. So there's certainly a lot to be discussed with regard to a budget, but also knowing that we have to prioritize our spending with health care and education, as well as the needs with regard to now a big conversation piece, water. And so the budget's a big piece of the conversation over the next 60 days. But we can't lose sight of the other issues. Florida has always been a leader in helping veterans, and we have a Florida GI Bill this year that will be beneficial to veterans and National Guard in the state. And besides that, it's about looking for opportunities to continue to streamline government, make Florida friendly for businesses.
How about you? Do you have time to carry bills and introduce local legislation, or are you primarily acting in a ministerial and referee type of role now?
Well, it's certainly both. For me, I don't have time to necessarily carry individual bills, but I have time to certainly focus on the important issues to my district and my constituents. And jobs obviously are a big issue, with still recovering from things with space shuttle shut down, but also right now water issues are important to this region of the state. So I've been very fortunate to have the Speaker kind of appoint me as the point person on that issue. So we're going to be working not a lot on the policy side of things, but more on the funding side in this upcoming session with regard to water. We feel like, given some of the budget situations, we can afford to put more money into the work that needs to be done to help clean up Florida's waterways, as well as opportunities for water storage. So, knowing that that's an important issue back here, I'll be working on that. But in regard to your question, I mean, it is certainly more of a ministerial way, with being the leader of the caucus as well as Speaker designate. My job, brings me to helping members with their priorities, as well as the Speaker with his priorities. But never losing sight of those who elected you.
Okay, so you are going to be Speaker after this session, I guess in the fall, correct? And so up to this point, you've had a special role as Speaker designate, right?
Sure.
But are you also like the majority leader too? Or okay, so now you've got this role where you are fundraising for everybody statewide. How's that going? Describe that.
It's going well. It certainly keeps you busy. We're all over the state and different parts of the state, introducing people to who we are and what we stand for. And by doing that, it gives you an opportunity to meet new people and bring new people into the fold with regard to politics. And, you're out there doing your job as Speaker Designate to raise money, because as Speaker Designate, you're also Chairman of House Campaign. So, raising money for your members and making sure that the resources are there for us to get our message out and for them to get their message out and be reelected is the first priority of Chairman of the caucus. But, you're also out there making sure that those that are engaged in this process know who you are and what you stand for and kind of where Florida's future is heading. And myself, as well as Andy Gardner, who is a senator from Orlando but also represents the Central and North Brevard area, he does the same thing. Sometimes we're in the same part of the state together, and we'll talk to different groups together and kind of let them know what they can expect over the next couple of years.
So you are meeting both the top donors in the state, but also getting to know local candidates and districts that you may not have visited otherwise.
Sure, and as well as meeting with different organizations that are engaged in issues around the state. They whether it be the Council of 100 or different groups like that around the state that want to hear what they can expect to potentially see over the next several years from future leadership.
Now, what is the farthest you've had to go? To the farthest you've had to travel to meet with somebody regarding giving to the campaign or the fund or whatever?
All corners of the country.
Oh, really?
from the Northeast to the West Coast, sure. People look at Florida as a very important state with regard to the future of our country, and and individuals want to know what's going on in Florida. And for us, it's important to make sure that we're out there talking to them about what we see as the future. And so we meet with a lot of larger individuals with regard to contributors to, actually both caucuses. I've met with people that are on the right, people on the left, but I've always felt that it's important to make sure that you talk to all groups. And so we've had that opportunity to do that, and we've been somewhat successful in getting out the message.
How do you learn to ask for money? I mean, that's the thing that I hear from candidates all the time. They say, man, I didn't realize campaigning was going to be so hard. And I say, what's so hard about it? Getting up early and knocking on thousands of doors? Is it the lack of sleep? And they say, no, it's asking for money. I mean, it's just, how do you do that?
Well, I will say that no amount of money will ever replace knocking on doors and getting out and meeting your constituents. But, it's not easy, especially for somebody like me. I mean, I come in from, the business world, and I've always thought, in a business, you kind of go out and do the things you got to do to make your money, and never having been a part of an organization that fundraises or, something like that, it was certainly a change for me. But, for me, I try to just let my message do the talking. If people believe in what I believe in and my vision for Florida, they'll be more willing to give. And usually I'm not somebody who asks in my first sit down. I let them absorb a little bit about what I had to say, and I let that do the talking. And we've been successful at doing that, and I feel that that's the best approach to take. And I've always kind of taken that with my politics as well, as far as being a representative. When you're taking money from those that are donors in your own personal campaign, you can't be bought for $500. You're talking to people about your visions and your thoughts, and if they believe in you and believe in your vision, then they'll contribute. And that's kind of the approach I've tried to take as a candidate as well. I
think Mike Herodopoulos, the former state senator, told me once that he would ask for money. He actually did his pitch on our show one time, but he said, it's easier because you're going back to people who you already have developed a relationship with, and then you're just going back and saying, look, I know you already believe in me, I need your help. And that's really about what it boils down to.
It does, especially as a candidate yourself. Now, when you're working your way into being a presiding officer, it's a little different, because sometimes you're meeting people for the first time. And, but like I said, I try to let my message work before I go asking for money, because I think it's just the right approach to take.
All right. Well, let's talk about some issues to Brevard County. You mentioned water earlier, and I think I saw a news report that said that Will Weatherford, today's speaker, is going to, in a lot of ways, sort of delegate water issues to you. The Indian River Lagoon is such a big issue right now. It seems like there's universal belief and a desire for action on pollution in the lagoon. Where do things stand with the state? Funding-wise, help-wise, what do you see?
Sure, and as I mentioned in my opening statements, we are in a position now with our budget that we have an opportunity to do some good things with regard to water projects. And I mean quality and quantity projects. I mean, obviously we have a problem with our aquifers and, the amount of water that we have available to us, so there's some opportunities there as well. But, the Speaker has designated me to do this. This is something that I've worked on my whole career in the legislature, all 5 years of it. But, it's been my silo of issues. I've studied the issues. I know them from a worldly experience as well. And, I'm trying to apply those understandings to this process. And what's important to recognize is we have a great opportunity. And this is not a Republican or a Democrat issue. This is a Florida issue, and that's how we're going to face it, and we're going to work on it that way. Funding is the big topic right now because we have that opportunity. We're going to try to focus on some projects. There's one right here in Brevard County that I actually funded the initial research on with the Egret project in the Ogallie River area. We're working to fund the completion of that project to go ahead and get it going. It's a $20 million project. We'll do it. We hope to do it in two phases.
Is it dredging or?
That will be muck removal.
Okay.
The Indian River Lagoon is made up of 71% of the lagoon is in Brevard County. About 5 to 6 million cubic yards of muck exist or have been identified in the lagoon. That Egret project would remove about 600,000 cubic yards of muck. So that's a good starting point. My goal would to be put a plan in place, over the next 3 or 4 years to complete the lagoons project and take care of that particular issue. There's other issues. There's over 800 different points by which water from stormwater dumps into the lagoon in Brevard County. That's significant.
Right.
Very little of that water is treated. Another one of my projects would be to, or ideas would be to try to make it so we can treat those points of distribution in the lagoon. Now, will that come to fruition through my 2 years of leadership? Probably not. I think it'll take something that, something that will take some time to accomplish, but I think it's a place that we can start. And I hope that, through this commitment that we are going to make up front now, there will be a commitment long term to do that, not only for the lagoon, but, for the rest of the state. There's areas all over the state that have challenges. And, it's one of those things that we have to know that we have to take more of a comprehensive look on this issue, and that'll be my job as a speaker to do so, but not lose sight of what's happening in my own backyard.
One of the issues I think we've talked about on the show is this issue of cities passing fertilizer ordinances. Now a bunch of them in Brevard County have done it. You were kind of overseeing some debate in Tallahassee over what, if anything, the state should do. Should it try to preempt that? Should it try to replace those with a state ordinance? Mm-hmm. Where do things stand as far as you know? Well,
they stand where they always have. I mean, the state has the model ordinance in place. There is no preemption to local governments doing, just as you mentioned, doing their own fertilizer ordinance. I still believe that, we need some kind of comprehensive approach to it because, consistency is important when you're looking at the lagoon. But at the end of the day, there's nothing stopping local governments from doing just that right now. In fact, some of the most stringent regulations are in Martin County and down in those areas where there's significant, problems with the lagoon. So, that's just another piece of the puzzle and the lagoon woes, so to speak. But I think first and foremost, having the opportunity right now to put some money into some of the projects will be beneficial, as well as Mother Nature cooperating. I mean, having over 50 inches of rain in the southern part of the county and Vero Beach and Fort Pierce area, caused for significant runoff, which caused to a lot of problems, with regard to the lagoon, with Lake Okeechobee outflowing into the lagoon and, having the freshwater intrusion. Now, in 2010, we had the freezes in the area that caused more problems. So, there's going to be a combination of state work that can be done, local work that can be done, and Mother Nature. And together we can do some good things for our water bodies.
I want to ask you about school funding.
Mm-hmm.
Brevard Public Schools is going through this kind of crisis with its capital funds. number of reasons for that. Falling property values, one of them. State funding for maintenance and construction went away during the recession. But another reason was that, that the tax rate that is charged for capital was lowered in a couple of different stages by the legislature during the recession. And it doesn't appear that the legislature is interested in raising the property tax rate again, but there is this option for a sales tax, which is going to voters in November. Is that what the legislature wanted, or what you would support happening? Or trying to get a sense of what's the new normal here?
Sure. Well, I will say that this legislature, the majority of this legislature, is never for increasing taxes. So we've pretty much tried to make that a well-known statement. But local government has the opportunity to do as they wish. If they want to go to the ballot, they certainly have that opportunity to do that. Locals can decide, when they go to the polls, whether or not they want to increase their tax base. With regard to this issue, unfortunately, Brevard County is paying for the sins of the past, and now it's come time to have to pay those bills, and they're trying to find ways to do that. We in Tallahassee have, prioritized spending and tried to live within our means, and obviously they've tried to do that as well here. But come November, the citizens of Brevard County are going to have an opportunity to make that determination.
Have you heard from school board members or the superintendent? I mean, what
Sure.
kind of
Sure.
case are they making to you, if any?
Well, I've met with them. Obviously I'm a voter, just like anybody else on this issue, and they've talked to me about it, and I want to learn more about it. I don't know their budget like I do the state budget, but certainly there's a message that they're trying to put out there. One thing I think would be, and I know there's no language actually to date, to my knowledge, that they have with regard to the ballot initiative, but I think it'd be important for them to potentially have a sunset with regard to this, because I think voters need to know that this isn't a forever bill that they're going to be paying, but this is something to make up some ground on things that have happened in the past. So that would be a recommendation maybe that I put out there, but certainly they're doing what they need to do to go out and educate the voters, and I know they're having little meetings around the county at different schools to do that education process. And it's no different than how we would handle an issue in Tallahassee to make sure the electorate knows what the issue is and what they'd be voting on.
What were the sins of the past?
Well, I think, having to go out and build all these new schools when we all knew that wasn't going to last is certainly something that we could have probably taken a better look at the time. I will tell you there was a push at one time, and I'm saying this all knowing that I have two kids in the public school system here in Brevard County, but there was a time where they wanted to build a school in R-Merritt Island, and I just thought to myself, how would this school survive? How would it continue to bring students in when there's really not a lot of areas left on R-Merritt Island to build with new development? A lot of these people are going to live in these homes, their kids are going to grow up, go away to college, and nobody's going to be filling back in behind them. And I think we in Brevard County went out and just started spending money on things that we didn't really think long term on, and I think right now, our school board and our school system is paying for it.
Let's talk about another issue that's dear to both your district and all of Brevard County. You mentioned earlier the space shuttle layoffs and coping with that. I think we've survived the layoffs from space, but now we're looking at what is our future. And are you hearing from local interests about space and what kinds of things the legislature might do to facilitate or help, I guess, with our diversification? Sure. and push into private?
Sure. One thing that I've continued to work on is being a partner for Space Florida and our economic development agencies in Tallahassee, whether it be Enterprise Florida or Office of Tourism and Economic Development, whoever it was at that time. I've always tried to make sure that I'm giving them the tools to make them effective in what they need to do with regard to being successful at their jobs. And I think Space Florida has done a great job of going out and attracting business to this area, taking some of the different areas of infrastructure out of the Space Center and filling them with commercial opportunities and smaller companies that are coming in. The unfortunate part of that is these companies aren't hiring thousands of people. They're hiring 50, 100, 150, 200 people, which is great. It's filling the void, but we're never going to get that influx in.
It's not the big government program that we used to have.
That's right. So, but I look to the sky and we're having launches more and more every day. here in Brevard County, my understanding is the manifest is probably one of the busiest manifests we're ever going to have with regard to, commercial launches, which is great. It shows that a lot of work has paid off, and there's certainly a lot of opportunities. But, we can't stop there. There's more to do. I continue to try to work with Space Florida to make sure they have the tools that they need to be successful. And Frank DeBello there has done a great job of going out and trying to find those opportunities and bring them back to Brevard County.
Now, is this issue with Shiloh, the area where I think it's Space Florida and others are trying to get a area outside the confines of Kennedy Space Center where it could be dedicated entirely to commercial space launches, so there wouldn't be all the same restrictions with security and all that. Is that part of your district, or is that part of your purview at all?
It's not part of our purview at the state level. I mean, certainly, we want to help Space Florida be successful in getting that done, but it's a federal initiative that would have to take place with regard to the environmental issues and the arguments that are being made. But ironically, it is actually my district, because I have the east side of the Indian River to Volusia County, where nobody lives, but it's it's a landmass that's in my district. But but it's one of those issues where we've got to decide, how we want to handle that. Is it an impact of a small piece of area for great potential opportunities with economic development and jobs and the whole bit, or is it 20 or 30 days a year that an area's got to be closed off and people aren't going to fish and do the things that happen around those areas? So, there's a balance. Obviously, they've had a couple of meetings, and as always, certain groups will show up and voice their opinions while others are, kind of unaware of what's going on. But, that's a decision that's going to have to be made at the federal level. And in fact, I talked to Senator Nelson's chief of staff this weekend about that issue, and he wanted my thoughts on it. And there's a combination of that as well as kind of things with regard to the range and the Air Force side, and more flexibility there for these commercial guys. So, I feel like we need to be as proactive as we can on these issues and making sure that we don't ever shut a door on an opportunity, to bring jobs to our area. And there's always ways to work around, the issues that are put out there. You just have to be mindful of them and try to be, successful in your approach.
One of the other issues that came up this past year, emotions aren't running as high now as they were several months ago, but there was some discussion of, do we need to take another look at the Stand Your Ground laws, not necessarily to repeal them, but other portions of it that we can tweak or change, or that might need revisiting in some way. Where do things stand now on that? Well,
we had a hearing, I think it was back in November in Tallahassee, and they chose not to change where we stand currently on Florida law, and that issue, in my mind, is done for this year, because the bill that was to repeal it was not passed through. So unless somebody else comes with other arguments, then to my knowledge, that issue would be done.
Okay. Now you're out in full campaign mode. Like, you're going to take a break from that when the session begins. But you've got a pretty good sense of the lay of the land. How do you size up the governor's race this year between Governor Rick Scott and former Governor Charlie Crist?
Well, I think Florida's voters are in a very good position to be able to weigh the individual candidates. Charlie Crist was a governor at one point, and he has a record, and Rick Scott has been a governor now for 3 years, and he has a record. And I think it's an opportunity to put the side-by-side analysis together and look and see who's done what. And in my mind, obviously, I believe Rick Scott has been right for the state. He's brought us back from the doldrums of unemployment numbers that were double digits, and we've got over 450,000 jobs that have been created in the last 3 years. I think those are the things that you want. Those are the initiatives you want from a business governor, a governor that sees government as a business, much like a lot of us do. Is we got to be thoughtful in our approach and be running it just efficiently and effectively like we do every day at home in our personal businesses. And that's kind of an approach that he's taken. And I think it's going to be obviously a battle of TV ads of who did what and when. But in my mind, Governor Scott has been good for Florida, and I think the record proves it.
What kind of TV battles are we going to see this year?
Well, we've already seen some.
I mean, that's why the campaigns cost so much, right? Is
sure.
Because so much of it goes into television?
Which drives ours up, because we're trying to compete for, for their TV time. But, you know, it's going to be a he said, she said, they did, he did, and that sort of thing.
It's going to be the usual.
It's going to be the usual back and forth, and it's going to
wall.
be up to the constituents of the state to decipher what's important to them and what's not. And you know, I encourage anybody that's out there voting to do their research and know who they're voting for. I mean, you know, Charlie Crist has moved on about every issue that he ever stood for as a Republican, and I don't know how you can be looking to the future of Florida and know that you can have somebody who's not standing firm on the principles of what they once believed in, you know, and now change their mind. And you know, and certainly people do that as politicians. I mean, that's certainly what people do, because they learn a little bit more about different situations, and they kind of gravitate maybe to the middle on things. But going 180 degrees on major issues is, to me, pandering. And you know, I just feel like Rick Scott has been consistent in what he wanted to accomplish, and the legislature has given him good legislation to be able to do that. And I think at the end of the day, he's right for Florida.
I was talking to Susan McManus, a political scientist over at USF, and she was saying that even though Charlie Crist has an edge over Scott on a number of the usual political issues, that "let's get to work" slogan is probably the best thing that he has going for him. It's what he's focused on, and he's built his whole record on it for the last several years. I suspect we'll probably hear that again.
Well, I think you'll hear that, and you're also going to hear the slogan, "It's working." And
right.
You know, and it is. At the end of the day, these policies and things that have been put in place over the last several years that he's worked closely with the legislature on have worked. And you know, I'm one of those that's a results kind of person. If it's working, then why stop it? Why change it? And it wouldn't be like we'd be changing it a little bit. We'd be going totally opposite of what we've been doing. So, you know, again, I believe that Rick Scott is right for the future of Florida. I think there's great opportunities there. I don't think by any means he's done being successful, and I think that this legislature, along with him as governor, will be successful for Florida.
Steve Crisafulli, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, that's our program. Remember, you can respond to anything you see on this program or read in Florida Today by sending us an email. Write to us at letters@floridatoday.com. I'm Matt Reed. We'll see you right here next week on WEFS and FloridaToday.com.